Okay guys, are you into following rules? I don't know that I am. Do you like paying extra fees for things you don't use? Another problem, right? Well, we're going to talk about an HOA, Homeowner Association, versus non-HOA. These HOAs, or deed-restricted communities, or neighborhoods, can exist in different ways. Sometimes they're gated, sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's a lot of amenities, golf courses, marinas, clubhouses, restaurants, and sometimes there's nothing or next to nothing. So you have to weigh all of them out. They all have advantages and disadvantages, and we're gonna talk about what those are if you're somebody that's gonna be considering moving into a community or maybe staying outside of the community because you can't stand that. We're getting after that next. First thing we have to talk about is what is an HOA? What is a Homeowners Association? Well, it's a governing body that makes the rules and enforces them within a deed-restricted community. So if somebody's doing something wrong, that's what that board is going to do. Whether it is owned by the homeowners or whether it is something that's paid to a professional company to take care of, that's a totally another animal. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. Sometimes it's lack of control. Sometimes it's too much control for the wrong person. If that happens, we'll talk about what you can do to fix that because there are ways around that. But first we're gonna break down what exactly is something that I would be paying for in an association and what exactly are the rules that I would have to follow. So we're gonna jump in on those right now. You tell me what rules you've had to put up with that were absolutely ridiculous. I'd love to hear it because some of the rules that I've heard out there, they're kind of nitpicky, and that's what drives people away from communities. You have that nitpicky, nosy neighbor that just has to get in everything. So comment down below what yours is. All right, so one of the big things that people look at communities for is, can you guess? Security, right? Everybody wants to feel safe. And many times in open areas, we don't feel safe. There's nothing around us, there's nothing to protect us. We don't feel secure unless there's sometimes a false sense of security put in front of us. Like, let's look at those things right over there. What's that thing along the water there? That's a fence, right? Do you think that fence is doing much? Yeah, it could keep the kids out. It could keep the gators from coming up in this little park, but that's not a guarantee, is it? Maybe it's a false sense of security. In any case, we are going to talk about the different types of security. So you have a manned gate where they will have a guard at the front that will check your license, take your license plate, note that you're there and who you are. Then you have an electronic system where you put your license into a little scanner and they tell you whether or not you can get in. You're either on a list or they can call the owner within the community and get you in. Or in some cases, there's no gate at all. It's just a deed-restricted community that will have rules to help keep the home in the best possible condition. So if you ever go to sell, that you're gonna keep the value. We're gonna talk about that more too, because that's a really big issue. But security, number one, hands down. And sometimes security can be extra with a roving security guard, either in a golf cart or another vehicle. Each of those have different price points. So you can imagine you're paying more if you have a manned gate, and you're paying, substantially less if you don't have gates at all. But then again, there goes that sense of security that we talked about in the beginning. Now, one thing I will caution you on, we talked about rules and regulations, and we're gonna get into a couple of those now, but check the HOA documents, check the declarations before you ever entertain moving into a community. See what they allow you to do and not do. Chris and Tim, one of our big obstacles is Tim loves to fish. He wants to fish in the stinking lakes, and guess what? The community won't let him. So we have to find a way to navigate that situation because everything else could work for him. Rule follower? No, he's not, but he's a big fisherman. So that one's something that we definitely have to work on. However, there are other rules in communities that you really may not like. It can be all the way down to animals. Now here's something I will tell you about pets. In Florida, at one time, they would restrict the number of pets, the weight of the pets, and the breed of the pet. Well, now they can no longer do the breed. It's considered discriminatory, so they cannot do any kind of screening out based upon that. The other thing that's kind of interesting is with service animals. they cannot restrict the service animal from coming into the property that's within this association. It has to be documented. There has to be a letter from a doctor. It can't be just one of these foo-foo made up things, put the red vest on and now they're a service animal. Because we know there's some of you out there, aren't there? And I get it. I understand it. I love animals and I would love to have mine with me all the time too. But that's one of the things that they're going to check, is they're going to make sure that you not only have documentation like that, but they want to see that the dog is licensed, immunized, and that you have liability insurance. Yeah, because when you have a dog, they can do whatever the hell they want, right? Maybe they bite somebody. Do you have liability insurance to cover that in case somebody sues you? So make sure that that is in place as well. But pets are something that have always been somewhat regulated within HOAs. One of the things about an HOA that people really can't stand is the condition of properties. And I mean, they can't stand it when they don't take care of them, right? Well, in some communities, you're gonna have different types of floor plans. So here's an example. Right across the lake over here, we've got condominiums, right? So there's condominiums. And as we scroll around to the backside here, we see single family homes, okay? Each of those is different. Single family homes, you do not have to use a lawn mowing service that's put in place by them. With the HOA over with the condos, you absolutely have to use what they're providing. And if you have special plants that you planted, you better go give instruction to those landscapers, because they're gonna chop it the way they know to chop it. Each plant in Florida has a way that it's groomed and maintained, and they will do it the way that they know to do it unless instructed otherwise. And guess what? You may not get the same landscapers every week. So even if you instruct somebody, don't count on it happening. As far as condition of property, you need to make sure you have fresh mulch in your flower beds. If you do not have the landscaping service, this is something you're going to have your landscaper do. They will need to do the mulching. They'll need to be trimming the bushes every so often. I'd say semi-annually is when they do it. If you don't, you're going to get a nice little note that's going to tell you to take care of it, or you're going to get fined. Yes, they give you fines. If you get a fine, you can blow it off for as long as you want to, but when you go to sell the property, you're going to have a nice balance there that's going to need to be paid before they're going to allow you to transfer the property. So I would just say maintain things the best you can. Look at the standards of your neighbors. If you get good neighbors, it may not be that big of a deal. If you get bad neighbors that are troublemakers, then it could be a whole nother problem. And there's some communities like this one that we're in right now that they at one time had a roving violation seeker. I guess that's what we'll call her. She had a little notepad, had a little pen, rode around in a golf cart, and was very kind in distributing notices to as many people as she could find. Another thing about communities that you're going to weigh out when you're looking at fees is what kind of amenities do I get? We mentioned that you may get a golf course, you may get a marina, possibly a clubhouse, fitness center. All these things cost money. So if you're going to use them, then absolutely figure what that would cost you to go to a gym and to put your boat in a marina and to get a golf membership somewhere. Add all those things up, then put it against the fees. That's going to tell you whether it makes sense or not. There are going to be very few things that you can change, but there is a board, either way, whether it's the homeowners or the professional, there's a board that meets every so often. If you want rules changed, you need to petition for it. You're probably going to have to get some signatures, and then you're going to have to go to their board meeting and speak your piece as to why you think it should apply or not. Also, if you're making any changes to your home whatsoever, paint color, tiles on the roof, like we have storms here, so if you're going to change the material of your roof, if you're going to change the color of your home, if you're going to add a pool cage, if you're going to put a pool on, if you're going to change the trees and bushes and things like that, all of that stuff needs to be approved by the Architectural Review Committee, and they will approve or deny whatever you're looking to do. But it has to pass through that. Whereas if you're outside the gates, you don't have to do any of that. You don't have any of these rules. Have whatever dog you want, have whatever color house you want. I've seen some pretty interesting colors on homes, but you can do what you want. You can do what you want on the outside too. Fencing, let's just talk about that real quick. Because of the fact that people do have animals and they maybe want to keep gators off their property or whatever else. Not that we see gators a lot like that. It's just, I'm just playing with you there. We don't see that often at all. But if that's one of your consideration or concerns, Outside the gates, you can put up vinyl fencing 6 feet tall that kind of obscures the view all the way around. You can't do that in a community. You get a chain link fence, and you get it, again, I'm gonna just walk you over here real quick. You get one that's basically like this. So it's gonna be a 4-foot black chain link fence because they don't want the view for the neighbors to be all messed up by a nasty fence. So fencing is something that we are going to pay particularly close attention to. So if you're outside the community and you have things like a boat, a trailer, a shed, those are things you're not putting in a community. But if you're outside the community, get a vinyl fence. Get a 2-tone vinyl fence. Get a 4-foot, 6-foot, I don't know if they do 8-foot, but you can do all those things whatever way you want to because nobody's telling you otherwise. So that's one of the biggest draws about Cape Coral, Florida, is there is no HOA for the whole city. And there also is no rule or regulation about your short-term rental. That's another draw that we get. And that's another thing you can't do in most HOAs because they have limited amounts of time you can rent out, the number of days, and you can only do it so many times per year. So if you're doing an Airbnb or VRBO, you're gonna be highly disappointed that you're not gonna be able to fill that often enough. Now you've heard in the past about how in Florida you can drive down the street and every other home looks like it's beat up and beat down and needs some help, and you see some really extravagant homes in a neighborhood that shouldn't belong. That happens all the time. We even have somebody that has like this Mad Max vehicle parked out front of its house. And yeah, it's allowed to sit there. I don't know why on earth it's sitting there and why they would allow it, but there's things like that that can happen outside of a community. Inside the community with the HOA, that's what it protects against. It protects against you having people doing stuff like that that's gonna affect your property value. How does it affect your property value? Well, it becomes undesirable. Who wants to live next to that? Do you want to live next to a house that half the roof is still off from a storm 3 years ago? Or that your fence hasn't been repaired in those 3 years? There's certain things that have to happen in a community that don't when you're outside. Now, inside a community, you're gonna see multiple home styles. We pointed out the condos and the single-family homes. Well, single-family homes in many communities, you have an estate style, which is the very large ones. Then you have like a, what is this in-between one called? It's the coach homes are the small ones. The villas are the smaller ones. They're on a small piece of land. You'll even see a garden home, which is really a duplex. They call it a garden home to make it sound sexier. Manor homes is the other one. So that's on a little bit bigger of a site, still single family home. Now, I've even heard of people being fined for their grass being 2 inches too long. I know that there's some communities that say if you leave your garage door open too long, they're gonna fine you for that. They want your garage orderly, so when it is up, it's not a pigsty. Certain types of plants can and cannot be done. Your mulch, it has to be a certain color. If it's not the color, they're gonna make you rip it out and put it in with the right color. I am not kidding. I've lived in associations, I've lived out of associations, and that one's ridiculous. The color of your mulch, yeah, they wanna keep uniformity. So remember, you're either gonna wear the uniform and be uniform, or you're going to do it your own way and kind of wing it. But those are your two choices when you come to this area. Now, one thing about the fees of places that have golf courses within them is the fees can be extravagant. Sometimes it's an equity program, so when you purchase the home, the golf comes with it. Then there's another style where you have to pay an equity membership. There's some that are $50,000 plus, and you don't get all the money back when you sell your property. I mean, they keep the majority of it. So you're really investing in the fact that you're going to be golfing all the time in the same place. There might be 1 or 2 18-hole courses, but you're gonna play the same ones each time. Now, I know golf is different every time you play it. I used to play all the time. But playing the same course repetitively like that could get old, especially when you're paying that kind of money where you feel like you have to. Other kind of fees that you get in some of the more elaborate communities is they will have a minimum that you have to spend at the restaurant. It could be $500, could be $1,000, but that is over the course of the year that you have to spend that amount. Does not include alcohol. So if you're one of those people thinking, ah man, I can take care of that in one weekend. Well, that's not what they're gonna allow you to do because they know that people can do that. It's about the food. In all these cases, you're going to have some kind of a fob, some kind of a key card, so that getting in and out of the clubhouse, the pool areas, all that, it is not randomly accessible by people that just make their way into the community. You saw how the gates just lift on these electronic gates, and you also see you can walk through them. So if I wanted to go to the pool and it didn't need me to have a card, I could walk through the gates, walk right out to the pool and use the pool. Not very cool, right? But there's people that do that. So just calling your attention to it, you will need a fob or some kind of an access card. The financials of a community are pretty important for lenders, and I've seen this more times in condos than single family homes, but they want to check a couple of things. The number of permanent residents in the community. They need to see the vacancy rate. If the vacancy rate is too high, meaning too many second homes, too many rental properties, too many seasonal visitors, then they deem that community to be less strong because the people aren't as tied to that property, given it's not their primary home. So you want to make sure that vacancy rate is high enough, and you want to make sure the reserves are there. Do they have enough money in the pot that if some storm came by and knocked down a bunch of trees, are they going to ask you to pay a portion of that, or is it going to be in your reserves? Very important, especially here in Florida. As far as fees go too, condos will have two fees. One's a condo fee, one's a master association fee. Master association fee covers every property type within the entire community, and it's normally in place to handle all the common things, like again, the clubhouse, the security, the fitness club, pickleball courts, the tennis courts, the basketball courts, the sand volleyball, the tot lot, all that stuff, the pool area, all of it's covered in the master. Condo fee, obviously it's specific to the condo. Exterior insurance, exterior paint. Any maintenance on the outside is done by the association. Everything inside is the owner's responsibility. So get an interior policy that covers from the walls in, so that if you have any water issues, electrical issues, water pipes breaking inside, all of that you want to make sure you're covered. So get a interior policy to take care of that for you. HOA will not take care of that, and if your unit is the top unit and it leaks down below and has nothing to do with anything exterior, it's all about your unit, now you're the one that's going to be responsible to take care of the damages to your person downstairs. So keep those things in mind. Condos are awesome. They're great for people who want to lock a door and walk away, have no real maintenance issues, but you're still sharing walls, you're sharing responsibilities. If you're in a building of 12 people and the roof needs repaired, it's divided 12 ways. So those are things you want to keep in mind. As you're going through this checklist of things that we've been talking about with communities, you also need to consider if there's any age restrictions. 55 plus communities do exist, and as it says, all the residents have to be 55 or older to be in there. There are some exceptions that they'll make for family members. If you're married to somebody that's 45 and you're 55, well, they're going to let them in just because they're married to you. Kids a lot of times can come in as well, visiting children for a certain time period, but you have to check the rules and regulations on that because each one's different. You may ask, well, are you in a community or are you not? And right now I am not. I was in a community before, as I mentioned. I can deal with both types of living. I don't know that one or the other is such an extreme that I wouldn't do it, but once again, I'd have to know what the rules are to know whether it's something I can handle. You're gonna have to do the same thing. Make a list of the things that they're saying are rules and whether you can handle them or not. Put them on a checklist. Do your pros and cons. Just like we go through pros and cons and tell you about an area, do your pros and cons to see if you can do that community. All right, everybody, so that's a little bit about HOA living inside or outside the community. I'm sorry for having to sit here the way I am, but unfortunately the wind is kicking today. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but the palm fronds, and these palm fronds that these tikis are made of are very rigid. So to see them moving like this wind is pretty strong, and my microphone will not like it. So I had to do this to be able to tell you everything I wanted to tell you. If I missed anything, please, please, please comment down below what you want to know. If you need more information about moving to the area, check out one of these other videos. And if there's anything that I can do to answer questions for you, call, text, email, Zoom call, use our app. I have an app out there to help you search properties. You'll want to be able to access it much like that on your phone as you're driving. And if you have any questions past that, again, just call me because I've got your back when moving to the Gulf Coast.